It is with interest that I read more and more articles addressing the downward slide of performance of New Zealand students, especially in mathematics, as highlighted by international studies like PISA. Former University of Auckland professor John Hattie thinks that streaming is the cause. Both previous Education Minister Hekia Parata and Labour's Education Minister Chris Hipkins agreed, but said schools would remain free to decide whether to stream children or not. Now, I'm not here to get into a debate about whether PISA is a good measure or not, or streaming versus non-streaming, MLE or traditional classroom layouts. All I'm saying is that in these days of inquiry teaching, we are all called to make data-driven decisions and to have at our fingertips all of the data we possibly can to evaluate our classroom practice. What I think is undeniable, however, is that the one factor that will affect student progress and achievement is effective classroom practice. What we are seeing, though, is that this is becoming an increasingly difficult, if not impossible task, identifying and then catering for all the diverse learner needs among our students. To do our job now, we need to work smarter because we cannot work any harder. The articles we read and comments from experts are too often focusing on the problems without giving any concrete solutions. Emeritus Professor Warwick Alley is quoted in an article in the Herald back in March titled "Dumbing Down a Generation, Performance of New Zealand School Children Plummeting." While the statistics are undeniable, there are still no concrete suggestions in this article either for how we are to address this. What I continually come back to, however, is that in my experience of 31 years in the classroom, looking at my own teaching, my own classes, and numerous observations of other teachers in different appraisal roles I've had, the one factor that will affect student progress and achievement is effective classroom practice. So, what are the barriers? What is preventing us from using this powerful tool to its highest potential? Many may be familiar with the TES.com website, which advertises itself as the largest online community of teachers. And in March of this year was an article written by a lead teacher from the UK by the name of Colin Harris. He quotes from an international study showing that school leaders are working on average 60-hour weeks and that teachers are being driven from the profession. In the article he states, to retain our best teachers, we need to stop killing them with planning, marking and meetings. Colin goes on to say there is a need to radically review the planning and assessment policies in schools. Planning and assessment needs to be radically reduced. How can a plan take longer to produce than the actual lesson? Secondly, assessment. Assessment as a tool has now become a straitjacket. Expensive systems have been brought in under which it takes hours to input all of the data. And for what? Are we better for it? Do we know more? After all, as soon as the data is inputted, it's out of date. There is a place for it, but not when it takes so long to produce. Finally, marking. Marking should never be for the benefit of the senior staff or parents. It's to move children's work forward. And so the best marking is carried out alongside the pupil, talking and discussing with them. Taking books home nightly for a 3-hour chore is not the way forward, and parents need to be shown this by the school. So, how can we work smarter? Firstly, I'd like to take a brief look at the work of Carol Twigg. Carol, in a great TED Talks address, talks about the power of yet. In this, she discusses the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset students. A fixed mindset, students who are in the now, tend to focus on results, on ability, and on what learners can do in the now. These students will typically run from difficulty, are more likely to cheat on a test, and will look for others who did worse than they did. Students with a growth mindset, who are yet or in the not yet, focus on progress. They focus on effort, on gaps in learning, where these are seen as learning objectives not yet met. Their focus is on learning as a continuum. This graph shows the difference between students who were taught the growth mindset versus those who were not. And Carol says to encourage a growth mindset, we need to praise widely, praise the process, their effort, their strategies, their focus, their perseverance, and their improvement. This produces learners who are hardy and resilient. In another study of hundreds of students, mostly adolescents, Dweck and her colleagues gave each 10 fairly challenging problems, then praised the student for his or her performance. Most had done pretty well, but they offered two types of praise. Some students were told, "Wow, you got so many right, that's a really good score. You must be smart at this." While others, "Wow, you got so many right, that's a really good score. You must have worked really hard." In other words, some were praised for their ability and others for their effort. The findings at this point are unsurprising yet jarring. The ability-praised students pushed right into the fixed mindset, and they showed all the signs of it too. When given a choice, they rejected a challenging new task that they could learn from. They didn't want to do anything that could expose their flaws and call into question their talent. In contrast, when students were offered praise for effort, 90% of them wanted the challenging new task that they could learn from. Perhaps most importantly, the two mindsets also impacted the students' level of enjoyment. Everyone enjoyed the first round of easier questions, which most students got right, but as soon as the questions got more challenging, the ability-praised students no longer had any fun, while the effort-praised ones not only still enjoyed the problems, but even said the more challenging, the more fun. The latter also had significant improvements in their performance as the problems got harder, while the former kept getting worse and worse, as if discouraged by their own success or failure mindset. So, a fixed versus growth mindset, there's one solution to the problem of falling student numeracy achievement levels. I'd like to come back to this shortly. Secondly, when it comes to effective teaching practice, what other barriers are there? Well, one is time to do our job. So how do we use our time now? Taking away administrative tasks, let's look at what happens in and around the classroom. Now, this is a mock-up, totally unscientific, but based on my experience in the classroom, just to illustrate a point. We are faced with many tasks during the day, but what if we could take some of the assessment time that's used to generate the data and reinvest that into student learning? What if we could take some of the marking and data generation time and reinvest that into our teaching and planning? What we end up with is increased time for student learning and increased time for teaching and planning. Surely this must have an impact on student achievement. So where does this extra time come from? Or how is it generated? Simply by working smarter, by embracing technology from the point of view of what it can do to enhance and accelerate student learning. So how do we work smarter with technology? Well, for the rest of this session, I'd like to introduce you to the next generation of interactive intelligent technology tools to support and enhance effective classroom practice, MathsWiz. I'll start by quoting Dr. Junaid Mubin, Director of Education at Wiz Education. Dr. Mubin says, personalised learning is widely heralded as education's liberation from the tired convention of one size fits all. Traditional models of schooling cannot cope with the growing demands of students and teachers. The spread of knowledge and skills among learners, along with rising class sizes and relentless workload, make it almost impossible for teachers to devote the individual attention every student requires. He continues, virtual tutoring is the great enabler of personalised learning. For the first time in history, we have the tools to extend the benefits of one-to-one tutoring to all learners. A virtual tutor is a fully automated instructor that uses artificial intelligence to simulate the behavior of a human tutor. It starts by diagnosing each learner's specific knowledge gaps across different curriculum areas and then develops individualized learning pathways to fill those gaps, constantly adapting the difficulty and form of content based on learner responses. The learning gains are impressive. The MathsWiz virtual tutor, developed by Wiz Education, has been shown to advance students' mathematical knowledge by 18 months in their first year with just an hour of use each week. It can make for nervy reading if you're a teacher, but rest assured, the role of human educators is more vital than ever. Virtual tutors are limited in two key areas. First, they are governed by data-driven measurements that capture only a sliver of students' thinking. Virtual tutors may impart core knowledge with frightening accuracy, but they do not broach deeper aspects of cognition like problem solving or reasoning, the very skills that are gaining currency as artificial intelligence sinks its claws into wider streams of blue-collar work. Even more importantly, virtual tutors cannot provide the social or emotional connection that underpins the richest learning experiences. No machine learning algorithm can replicate the human dimension of teaching, the part that makes personalized learning personal. Unfiltered acceptance of technology will result in the same narrow and impersonal learning experiences that arise from one-size-fits-all instruction. The key question then is how teachers can marshal virtual tutors to deepen their interactions with students. Too much of teachers' time is wasted on mundane tasks that distract from their face-to-face interaction with students. Virtual tutors and the real-time learning analytics they supply automate menial components of teaching, such as knowledge transmission and grading of structured tasks. Teachers can instead focus on planning and deliver richer classroom experiences aimed with data-driven insights. The real power of virtual tutoring is in augmenting the teacher's role by allowing them to devote more time to each learner. Dr. Mubin concludes, data can only capture so much. Education is already in the grip of high-stakes measurement, as students, teachers, and entire education systems are increasingly judged solely in terms of blunt performance outcomes. Artificial intelligence has the potential to disrupt the assessment paradigm. Instead of relying on snapshot test scores, educators can track students' progress as it unfolds, thereby lowering the stakes by using assessment data as a proactive feedback tool rather than as an accountability mechanism. Data can only ever represent a partial measure of students' learning. Artificial intelligence must not be allowed to substitute for the human judgment of teachers. MathsWiz, an engaging online numeracy program that accelerates student achievement. Firstly, does it work and how does it work? The MathsWiz online virtual tutor guides each student through a comprehensive maths curriculum, starting with an initial diagnostic assessment and then delivering lessons according to their individual needs. The MathsWiz tutor is based on automated lesson delivery that adapts to each child's individual needs and pace of learning. Lessons are chosen at the appropriate level of difficulty based on the child's past performance. MathsWiz champions mastery learning, and the tutor will not allow students to progress to the next learning objective within a topic until they have passed both the exercise and the test. The MathsWiz Maths Age fosters a growth mindset. The Maths Age metric of overall ability reinforces a growth mindset in students and teachers, as it gives a tangible measure of progress over time and shows that maths ability is dynamic and grows with sustained effort and practice. With an effective initial benchmark, the initial Maths Age, we have a baseline from which we can measure progress. This is an inclusive model where all learners are equal. Ability is not the focus, progress is. An international study was completed based on over 12,000 students. The statistics that follow are based on the arithmetic mean of the students within each usage bracket. The data shows that students who use MathsWiz for between 30 and 45 minutes per week over the course of their first year improve their maths age by around 1.2 years, slightly more than the expected amount over a whole year. Students with usage between 45 and 60 minutes per week enjoyed accelerated progress, increasing their maths age by around 1.6 years over the course of their first year, and the learning gains continue to increase with higher usage levels, with students in excess of 60 minutes per week MathsWiz usage showing gains upwards of 1.95 years in their first year of study. Case studies in New Zealand are showing accelerated learning when MathsWiz usage is mapped against student achievement in our standardised assessments. The green bars in this graph are not the high-achieving maths students, they're students who are using MathsWiz for 60 minutes or more per week, and they are showing accelerated progress through the gloss stages across all curriculum areas. Here we looked at PAT scale score improvement. Again, the MathsWiz users who are using the program for 60 minutes or more a week showed an overall increase in PAT scale score in excess of other learners in their cohort. Students are given an initial diagnostic assessment which identifies their areas of strength and weakness. From this, the MathsWhiz program sets individualized learning plans for each student, targeting their areas of weakness. Teaching is then given in each topic at the individual student's level, followed by exercises that allow them to practice and reinforce what they have learned. After this, a mini-assessment is given, and if mastery is gained, the student is moved on to the next, higher achievement objective. As each learning objective is passed or mastered, a little bit of blue gets filled in their progress chart, ultimately resulting in a more even learning profile with no more areas of weakness. While teachers are getting on with their own class programs, MathsWhiz is working in the background, filling in the gaps in each learner's profile, making the job of the classroom teacher easier as new content is introduced. As part of the student learning experience, not only does the program continually adapt to student achievement, as each progression is made, the student's learning program is adjusted, taking them to the next higher learning objective in that particular subtopic, but the program also intelligently adapts to individual student needs in the following areas. Firstly, skip. In the majority of exercises, if a student gets 4 questions correct in a row, there will be a pop-up asking the student if they wish to skip the remaining 6 questions and move straight to the assessment. For example, you may have just finished teaching on transformation geometry, and the student gets an exercise addressing what you have just covered in class. If they have already mastered the particular learning objective in class, there is no point in continuing to answer all 10 questions. Student online learning time is maximized by giving the student the option to progress straight to the assessment. Regression. If the student gets 4 questions wrong in a row, the program will automatically intervene, exiting the student from the exercise and taking them back to a prior learning objective. For example, a student may be struggling with partitioning of 3-digit numbers, so MathsWhiz will take them back to partitioning of 2-digit numbers to consolidate their learning, reteach the earlier learning objective, and then when mastery is gained, move them back on to the higher level content. Firstly, when looking at students operating in an online environment, that is, being able to operate in an environment where technology can work for us, can I suggest that there are 2 measures that you need to focus on when evaluating the effectiveness of the time that your learners are investing and the funds your budgets are committing to. Student learning time. This is a limited resource and once used can't be recreated or reused. When your students are online, are you getting data showing what they've been doing, that is, how they've been using their time effectively, how they've been doing, are you getting progress and achievement data, and finally what their next steps need to be? As teachers, we are not the only ones who need to work smarter. Financial investment, again, a limited resource. So are you getting the data to know whether what you are doing is effective or not? While your students are working, do you get data that shows progress? Have they made progress towards agreed achievement goals? Achievement, to assist you with planning and reporting. Secondly, we need to be releasing teachers from time-consuming data generation, testing and marking, and some of the necessary data collation and presentation to get it into a usable format, and then reinvest that time into effective teaching practice. Are your current programs enabling you to do this? Working smarter rather than harder will mean utilizing technology in the areas of monitoring, measuring, and reporting on student progress and achievement, freeing us up to do what we have all been trained for, and that is making a real difference to student engagement, learning, and achievement. The effectiveness of any investment needs to be measured. If you are not getting a return on that investment, or if you are not sure, you may not have the data, then should you be re-evaluating where your investments are and possibly reallocating them? As well as having a comprehensive student assessment and learning engine, MathsWhiz has an equally impressive administration portal. Here, teachers and administrators have full access to their own site management, as well as extensive data reporting and monitoring tools. In this display, a green tick signifies accelerated learning. Students are averaging 3 or more progressions per week over the specified reporting period, while their MathsWhiz maths age will also be increasing at a faster rate than their chronological age. All the time students are online using MathsWhiz, Data is being generated in the background, collated and presented for you to view, analyze, download, and then use to inform teaching practice, to identify at-risk students, to find specific information about those at-risk students and why they're not achieving, as well as giving you the tools to effectively deal with those issues. The main class dashboard will show you at a glance the students who have been making the most progress over your selected reporting period, and this makes it easy to acknowledge and reward progress, to praise effort, application, and resilience, to move students into a growth mindset. In the Comparisons tab, you can easily change from an ability to a progress overview. Students can be shown in order of ability, great for confirming maths groups if you sort on ability, or in order of who is making the most progress. This is a great student engagement and motivation tool, as all students will start every week the same, and all have an equal chance of making the most improvement regardless of ability. Improvement is directly related to effort and application. All the data that you see in the admin portal can be downloaded into a spreadsheet format. One of the applications in the Topics tab is that as well as getting an overview of your class performance, improvement and ability in each topic, is that downloading this data into a spreadsheet allows sorting by ability in each NZC achievement objective. Now your maths groups can easily be arranged and rearranged based not just on overall maths ability, but ability in a discrete skill set area. An overview of data is given by default. Clicking on the Detailed tab shows more data sitting in the background, allowing this to be fed directly into teacher inquiries and key intervention strategies. From the detailed display, see at a glance students at risk, low usage or high usage, low progress. You can drill down into the data that raises further questions, for example, low average test scores. Drilling down into individual student histories allows you to identify problems quickly. Looking at individual student data, as well as activity, progress, and achievement data, other formative assessment is being done in the background, showing, for example, exercises that are exited before completion, exercises where students have elected to skip forward and take their next mini-test early, as well as exercises where students have struggled and where there has been intervention on the part of the MathsWiz intelligent tutor as a result. MathsWiz is fully aligned to the New Zealand curriculum, and all the time the students are online, MathsWiz is assessing and collating performance data measured against each individual NZC achievement objective. As mentioned earlier, all data that you see in the admin portal is downloadable into a spreadsheet format for further individual analysis and grouping. One application is that student achievement data can be downloaded and then used to feed into reporting and also feed forward to students and assisting them in developing their next steps. Reading the curriculum report vertically will give educators insight into overall class strengths and weaknesses. In this screenshot, there is class mastery in NA 26 and 27, that is, number algebra level 2, bullet points 6 and 7, additive strategies and partitioning of numbers. But overall the class is weaker in GM 27, geometry measurement level 2, bullet point 7, or transformation geometry. This could be valuable in preparing starter or short-term activities for the class. An emphasis on transformation geometry would be an effective use of time, as it is targeting an area of actual need in the class. So, reading the chart vertically gives insight into class trends, but reading the report horizontally gives performance data for each student measured against each individual NZC achievement objective. Now, student progress and achievement data is available at the click of a button for every student measured against each New Zealand curriculum achievement objective. Where class weaknesses are highlighted, mousing over the achievement objective will give the AO descriptor. Clicking on the achievement objective will give a drop-down of all of the MathsWiz exercises directly linked to that achievement objective. Access to all of the exercises and associated teaching snippets is available for use on class screens or projectors. Teachers who are not completely confident in particular areas, or for concepts like transformation geometry, where static drawings are not always the most effective, this provides extremely valuable tools to be used in class teaching. So, in summary, The key to accelerated student achievement and progress is effective classroom teaching. Removal of barriers to release teachers into doing their job is becoming increasingly important as more and more seems to be added to job expectations. We can't work any harder, so the solution is to use intelligent technology to work alongside us as a virtual teaching assistant, giving us time to do what we're good at, assisting and facilitating the lifelong learning processes that we are embedding in our learners. Here supporting teachers, the team at ULearn Interactive MathsWiz.